I pushed her to the floor of a $60 billion mansion in front of 500 people, and I felt nothing. I took her job, I emptied her bank account, I stood over her while she bled on marble that cost more than her entire life, and I smiled. I called her worthless. I called her nothing. I told her she came from nowhere and she would die nowhere. And every single person in that room, every powerful, wealthy, important person watched and did nothing. I was certain I had won. Then a little silver pendant spun across the floor and stopped at the feet of an old security guard. He picked it up. He read 3 words, and his face turned to ash, because in that moment, the man who thought he owned everything realized he was standing in her house. The most dangerous person in the room is never the loudest one. It's the one everyone forgot to be afraid of. If that sent a chill down your spine, good. That means you felt the truth in it.
Hit subscribe.
So you never miss a story like this. Drop a comment. What would you have done if you were her? And share this with someone who needs to remember silence is not the same as weakness.
The security footage showed it all with cold precision. A woman in a borrowed dress fell backward onto a polished floor. A man stood with his hands out, the force of his push still hanging in the air. 500 wealthy guests were frozen, a gallery of silent witnesses. No one wanted to be there. Then came the sound, that awful, sharp sound of a body striking Italian marble. Lenora Washington landed on the floor of the Harrison Estate ballroom. Pain shot through her shoulder and her hip, blurring her sight. Blood bloomed on her lip, a dark crimson against the pristine white. For a moment, the only sound in that $60 billion mansion was her own shallow breathing, her silver pendant, the one her grandmother gave her when she was 8 years old. It snapped from its chain and spun across the floor. It flashed under the chandelier light before it stopped against a pair of polished black shoes. Nobody moved to help her. 500 of the city's elite watched a woman bleed on the floor. Not a single person offered a hand. In a room like this one, power is the only thing that has value, and everyone in that room believed Lenora Washington was worthless. Her husband, Darnell, towered over her. His handsome face was a mask of rage and triumph. His mother, Beverly, stood just behind him, holding her champagne glass high as if in victory. And Candace Thornton, the woman who had taken Lenora's place in every way, clicked away on the marble, her laughter echoing. But not one of them noticed the old security guard bend down and retrieve that pendant. None of them saw his hand shake as he read the name engraved on it. And none of them heard his voice tremble into his radio, a voice that had waited 40 years for this moment. Code Harrison. Ballroom, she is here. Get Mr. Vincent immediately. 72 hours before, Lenora had been someone else. Not changed in a dramatic way people talk about. She was changed in the way a person is when they are slowly erased from their own existence, piece by piece, over 5 years, until they forget the sound of their own voice when it is not apologizing. She woke up at 5:15 on a Tuesday. She was in an apartment she could not really afford, in a bed that was always half empty. Her husband had not come home. Again. The sheets beside her were cold and perfect. She had learned not to be surprised. Surprise requires hope. And Lenora had given up hoping for anything from Darnell Washington years ago. But she still made breakfast for 2. 2 plates of scrambled eggs with cheese, toast with butter, coffee with cream, and 2 sugars, just how he liked it. 1 plate would stay untouched, like it did every morning. She would scrape the food into the garbage can around 7:30 before she left for her job. She would feel that old sting of waste and sadness. It had become as normal as brushing her teeth. The apartment was small, but it was immaculate. Lenora kept it perfect because Beverly, Darnell's mother, would appear without warning. She would run a finger over the furniture, searching for dust, as if conducting an official inspection. The furniture was cheap, all bought on clearance. The only truly beautiful thing was a framed picture of Lenora's grandparents. Thomas and Ruth stood before their small wooden house in Georgia. Their smiles were so large you could feel their warmth through the glass. Lenora touched the photo as she passed. It was a ritual she started after Ruth died 2 years ago. Thomas had passed away the year before. They were both gone now. They took their warmth and their secrets with them. She drove to the hospital in a car that had 187,000 miles on it. The check engine light had been on for 6 months. It glowed like a small orange sun on the dashboard, a warning Lenora could not afford to deal with. She could not fix the car. Darnell had borrowed her savings 4 months ago. He called it a business opportunity. The money was gone. She had learned it was better not to ask about it. At Riverside Memorial Hospital, Lenora was a completely different person. She worked in pediatric oncology. It was the ward where children fought wars. They were battles no child should ever have to face. And she was brilliant at her work. The children called her Miss Lenora. They gave her drawings that she kept inside her locker door. Their parents gave her their trust, the most valuable thing in their world. She cared for that trust with a kindness that came from a deep, unbreakable place inside her. Her supervisor, Dr. Crawford, stopped her in the hall that morning. He had news that made her feel a spark of hope for the first time in a very long time. Lenora, I want you to know you are being considered for the head nurse position. You have earned it. Your patient outcomes are the highest on the floor. Every family I speak with mentions you by name. Lenore felt the sting of tears in her eyes. The good kind, the rare kind. Thank you, Dr. Crawford. That means more than you know. She moved through her morning, carried by that small piece of hope. At lunchtime, she sat in the break room and checked her phone. There were no messages from Darnell. There were no missed calls. There was only a blank screen reflecting a face that was beautiful in a quiet way. It was a face people usually ignored. Dark eyes held more sadness than a 32-year-old woman should carry. A silver pendant lay against her collarbone, catching the harsh light. Her best friend, Clara Jenkins, stood in the doorway. She was holding 2 plastic containers of leftover pasta. She wore an expression that said she had things to say, whether you wanted to hear them or not. Girl, are you sitting here staring at that phone, waiting for that man to call you? Clara put the pasta down harder than she needed to. Because I need to tell you what my therapist told me, and you need to hear this. Clara, I am fine. You are not fine. You are eating a hospital salad for your lunch. He borrowed your grocery money for a so-called business. And I am making air quotes around that word so you can feel them. Let me tell you this. When a person shows you their true self, you should believe them the very first time. You are waiting for version 2.0 of a man who never even did the first update. Lenora laughed. It surprised her. She could not remember the last time she had laughed. Clara could do that to people. She was loud where Lenora was quiet. She was fierce where Lenora was soft. She could tell the hard truth, but she wrapped it in humor so it was easier to take. Clara pushed the pasta to her. Eat some real food. And listen, do you know what insanity is? It is doing the same thing again and again and hoping for a different outcome. You have been saving that man's dinner every night, for 5 years, as if he is going to suddenly appear with flowers and an apology. He is my husband, Clara, a husband who never comes home. a husband who takes your money, a husband whose mother treats you like you are something she stepped in. Clara leaned closer. Her voice became gentle. You deserve so much better than this, Lenora. You know that, do you not? Lenora touched her pendant. It was what she always did when she needed strength. I know, she said softly. But there is a difference between knowing something and doing something about it. Clara watched her for a long time. Then she said something that Lenora would remember later, after everything fell apart. There is a difference between surviving and just waiting to sink, baby. And I am getting scared about which one you are doing. This was the right decision. Everything felt correct. Candace was an engine of progress. My mother was a pillar of truth. Then the key turned in the lock. Lenora was home. The old world walked in with her, the stagnant air, the lack of ambition. My mother, Beverly, saw it clearly. She always did. Her face was a mask of elegant disapproval. Beside her sat Candace Thornton, 33 years old, a weapon in a suit. Candace was my future made real. She wore success like a second skin. Her presence made the room feel important. I called her my business partner. It was a title too small for what she was. The connection between us was obvious. The way her hand found mine, the way she angled her body toward me. She looked at Lenora with the calm assessment of a predator. My mother spoke the truth about last night's dinner. She said Lenora would ruin it, even from afar. Failure was her shadow. Lenora moved with a familiar apology in her steps, a ghost in her own house, a quietness I had come to despise. She said a greeting. No one returned. She moved toward the kitchen to hide. Then her eyes locked on to Candace's wrist. The light caught the gold. It was a beautiful sight, a piece of the past, properly repurposed for the future. That bracelet had been a mistake, a sentimental gesture for a wedding anniversary, a promise of a future I no longer wanted. I told her she had lost it, a simple lie to correct a simple error. I told her she was careless, that she did not deserve nice things. The words were true, just not in the way she understood them. Now it was on the right wrist. My bracelet, she said. Her voice was a fragile thing, a little spark of defiance. Candace looked at her with pure disinterest. Excuse me. The words were a dismissal. My anniversary gift. The table grew quiet. My mother waited. My jaw was tight. I felt nothing but resolve. I did not even let Candace answer. My voice was sharp, a tool to make things clear. I bought the bracelet. It is mine. I decide its purpose. Your problem, Lenora, is your sentimentality. You believe a single moment makes something yours forever. You cling. My mother set down her fork. Her satisfaction was a tangible thing in the air. She clings to my son, to this apartment, to that pathetic job. She is a weight. Candace smiled. A slow, precise movement. Some things find their rightful place. She held up her wrist. The gold chain gleamed under the light. It looked perfect there. It is a lovely piece. Darnell has excellent taste. The laughter that followed was a confirmation. A shared understanding. In this room, at this table, Lenora did not exist. She was a footnote, a problem being solved. She went to the bedroom. She closed the door so softly. Even her sadness had to be silent. She was calling her friend, I knew, whispering her little pains into the phone. I need to survive, she would say. Pathetic. We laughed again. The sound of our victory filled the space she left behind. Survival is for animals. We were building an empire. Her friend would give her useless advice. Build a boat, she might say. Lenora could barely tread water. She would sit in the dark and wish for a different life. She would pray for some silly promotion, for a kind word from me. She would clutch some trinket her grandmother gave her. She did not know that we were the storm, that the quiet before the tornado was already over. Today was the day we would finally cut the anchor loose. I felt no remorse, only a sense of clean, forward motion. Today the final pieces would fall into place. Her world was built on sand, her job, her sense of self-worth. It would all wash away. The hospital badge would not work. A small detail, carefully arranged. A red light blinking, a final decisive no. A security guard would escort her away. The Human Resources Director, Sandra Cole, would deliver the news. Multiple complaints, a pattern of behavior, aggressive outbursts, theft, all lies, of course, but they were beautifully constructed lies, lies that would stick. Lenora would deny everything. She would cry. It would not matter. She would name her allies, Dr. Crawford, people on her floor, but they could not help her. Dr. Crawford had been warned to stay away. This was not a discussion. It was a termination, indefinite leave, effective immediately. She would ask who accused her. She would demand a name, but the complaints were anonymous, detailed, consistent. Protocol had to be followed. She would walk out carrying a small box, 7 years of her life, children's drawings, and old shoes. The contents of a life that did not matter, easily packed, easily discarded. Then she would see the final move, Candace Thornton, arriving in a black car. A vision of professional power. She would be there on business. Candace would see Lenora holding that pathetic box. She would smile. A smile of pure accomplishment. A project completed on time and under budget. Candace would walk into the administrative building, and Lenora would finally understand. The detailed complaints, the consistent sources, the work of a lawyer, the work of an artist. This was not my casual cruelty. This was a strategic demolition. This was about ensuring she had nothing. No job, no leverage, no escape. She would drive home in a fog. I was on the couch when she walked in. I saw the box. I felt no surprise, only impatience. Fired. The word was a clean cut. Can you do anything right? I have to carry you. You are useless. She tried to correct me. Suspended, she said. A meaningless distinction. You better find something, I told her. I am not carrying dead weight. My phone buzzed. It was my mother. I put her on speaker. I wanted Lenora to hear. My mother's voice was clear. She is dead weight, son. Cut her loose. Has she found a lawyer? Candace said we should file for divorce quickly before she can try to claim anything. My eyes met Lenora's. For a single beat, I saw something. The girl from years ago, the children's drawings in the box, a flash of guilt. I crushed it. It was a weakness I could not afford. We will talk later, Mom. I hung up the phone. Lenora stood there, broken. She finally understood. This was not an accident. This was a campaign. That night, I left her there, updating a resume that no one would ever read. This was the only way. I adjusted my tie, the silk a final, perfect touch. Everything had to be perfect tonight. A clean break is a kindness, after all. Lenora deserved that much. She was too fragile for this world, clinging to memories like that dusty plot of land in Georgia. 40 acres of sentimentality. It was a dead weight, holding us both down. Our strategy was not cruel, it was practical. A surgical procedure to remove a tumor of the past. Candace saw it clearly. The legal language was her art, precise and effective. We were building a future. The house in Georgia was simply the foundation. People might call it a fortune, that $200,000 or $300,000, but it was just seed money, a stepping stone to a life of consequence. The plan was flawless. The divorce was a formality. Candace would handle the proceedings with clinical skill. We had the hospital records, the manufactured complaints, they painted a clear picture of instability. Her instability. With Lenora deemed unable to manage her own affairs, the settlement was a certainty. We would liquidate the asset, divide the capital, and move on. Lenora would be free from burdens she could not handle. A final message confirmed our timing. Phase 1 was done. The gala was the beginning of Phase 2. I felt a sense of purpose. This was right. I remember her grandmother's voice, a droning, folksy sound from a time best forgotten, silly advice about graves and shovels. Lenora absorbed that nonsense. It made her passive, weak. I took a deep breath, letting the clean air of my success fill my lungs. We had every email, every document prepared. Our case was ironclad. She could cry, she could think. It did not matter. When I arrived home late that night, she was a statue in the dark. I saw not a person plotting, but a person dissolving. She was fading away exactly as planned. This was a mercy. The smell of her perfume was a promise. Candace, power, the future. Lenora was the past. I knew her friend would arrive soon, armed with cheap wine and cheaper platitudes. Claire, the enabler. She would listen to Lenora's fantasy, her dramatic retelling of my supposed betrayal. I imagined the scene, the tears, the outrage, the two of them clinging to each other in their shared weakness. It only strengthened my resolve. Lenora needed to be saved from herself, from these influences, and I was the only one with the courage to do what was necessary. Candace was a master. Suspending Lenora was a stroke of genius. It was clean, official. It created the narrative we needed. Claire would probably suggest some foolish, emotional response. A screaming match. A pathetic, angry note left on a car. They did not understand strategy. They understood only feelings. While they were crying over wine, we were building an empire. Every piece of paper, every phone call was a brick in our new life. A life free of nostalgia. A life free of the dead weight of her family's forgotten little patch of dirt. The gala was magnificent, a monument to real power. The kind of power I was about to seize. We moved through the crowd, a perfect team. I thought of Lenora, probably sitting in a dark room sifting through old photographs and dried flowers. A woman lost in the past. That was her world. This was mine. She came from nothing. A sad little family in a wooden house. The name Marcus Harrison meant nothing. It was just a name, as insignificant as her own. She was a ghost here. A footnote I was about to erase completely. This room was a testament to legacy. My legacy was just beginning. I would build it myself. I earned it. Not like these people, born into fortunes they did not appreciate. I saw Candace across the floor, a queen in her element. We had earned our place. We took it. I thought of Lenora's pendant. Harrison, a cheap piece of metal with a name from a past that did not matter. Soon, even that small memory would be gone. She would have a new identity. The unstable woman who lost everything because she could not cope with reality. Our reality. Her grandmother's instructions were a final act of foolish sentimentality, protecting a child from a truth that could save her. Marcus and Diana Harrison. These names were ghosts. They chose to hide their daughter away, to wrap her in a life of comfortable poverty. They called it love. I called it cowardice. They built an empire and then abandoned the heir. They left her with nothing but a name on a trinket. They left her vulnerable. They left her to me. I was the consequence of their fear. I was the danger they tried so hard to avoid. The truth was a tidal wave. She was the heir, not just to a small house, but to all of this. The estate, the foundation, the dynasty, Gregory Vincent. The name echoed in the silent space where my plan used to be. The gala was not a neutral location. It was her home. I was standing in her home, plotting to steal the dirt from under her fingernails, while she owned the marble beneath my feet. My mind could not grasp the scale of it. The world had inverted. I was the pauper. I was the fool. The pendant. L. H. Harrison. Legacy. It was never a trinket. It was a key. A birthright. I watched her pick up the phone. Her voice did not tremble. It was the voice of a monarch claiming her throne. Vincent and Associates. The name sounded like a death sentence. For the first time, I saw the woman who had been there all along, hidden, waiting. I had not been breaking a fragile doll. I had been poking a sleeping dragon, and I had just woken her up. The silence on the other end of that call was my future evaporating. Mr. Vincent's words were calm, but they were the hammer blows that shattered my world. The deadline was tomorrow, her 32nd birthday. 3 years they had been looking. 3 years I had been living with an empress and never knew it. The trust included everything. The properties, the shares, the entire Harrison fortune. It was all hers. I looked at the woman beside me, my partner, my brilliant strategist, and our clever little plan to steal a few $100,000 felt like a child's game, a pathetic, ridiculous joke. And the punchline was me. It was a necessary move, a clean cut. I watched the numbers shift on the screen, feeling the rightness of it. This was foresight. This was protecting our future from her weakness. Tomorrow, the Harrison Gala would open doors. The right people would be there. It was the annual foundation event. Her parents started it 30 years ago. An irony she was too simple to appreciate. It was her home, technically. My home, I thought, correcting the universe. A home needs a firm hand. The money was now safe. It was where it could grow, under my guidance. She was a child with finances, a danger to herself, to us. I was not being cruel. I was being responsible. I was the husband. This was my duty. My plan required capital and a flawless image. She would understand one day, or she would not. It did not matter. It was a matter of order, control. I looked across the hall at my wife, a fragile little bird I had kept in a gilded cage for 5 years. She believed this was her grandparents' little party. She had no idea it was the dawn of my empire. I had been patient. I had corrected her flaws. I had taught her that her own thoughts were worthless. Tonight, I would finally take the reins of her $60 billion fortune. For her own good, of course. For our good. She stood there, clueless, a perfect porcelain doll. And I was her master. Everything was proceeding exactly as I had planned it. It had been so easy, necessary even. That morning, I moved the last of the money, her nursing paychecks, her pathetic little emergency fund. It was like cleaning out a child's piggy bank before a long journey. She could not be trusted with resources. She was too emotional, too weak. I saw the transfer complete. $0 and 0 cents. A perfect, clean slate. I had done it to protect her, to protect our future from her foolish impulses. The bank representative confirmed it was all gone. It was not theft. It was stewardship, a husband's duty, a burden I was strong enough to carry for the both of us. I kept my voice calm when I answered her second call. Cold. Oh, that, I said. I explained the joint investment account. For us, for our future. You should be thanking me. Her predictable reply came. I cannot access it. I have nothing. It was the perfect moment to remind her. Then I guess you had better stay on my good side. I hung up. The silence that followed was satisfying. 24 hours ago, she was just my wife. 4 hours ago, she was a problem I had solved. And now, she could not even buy a cup of coffee. It was elegant. It was necessary. She needed to learn dependence. She needed to understand her role. I called Candace. I told her what happened. Her laughter was like music. Tonight was about preparation. I was staying at my own apartment. I needed focus, not arguments, not her quiet disappointment. Candace came over. She brought wine. She brought her sharp, brilliant mind. We sat at my clean kitchen table and finalized the plan for tomorrow. I have everything, I told her. Control of the finances, control of the narrative. All the proof I need is the success they will see on my face. On paper, she might own a rundown cottage. But in the real world, in that moment, I was the one with all the power. Candace sat across from me. She took my hand. "Listen to me," she said. "You have something he will never have. You have me." And tomorrow night, we were going to walk into that gala. We were going to stand in that house. We were going to let them see the future. What if they do not see it? I asked. She squeezed my hand. They always see power. It just does not always look like they expect. Friday evening, the Harrison estate was a beacon on the hillside, golden light on perfect lawns. It was a world built on strength. The cars arriving were black and silver, reflections of the money inside, men and women who understood the rules. Inside, the ballroom was a temple to wealth, crystal and marble. The air smelled of money and history. A string quartet played something I recognized as expensive. 500 guests, the right kind of people, old money, new money, my kind of money. Everyone played their part. And somewhere in this perfect room, the man who deserved to own it had just arrived. Candace was a miracle. She had found a red dress that was both a statement and a promise. It clung to her like it was made for her. It screamed power. It was elegant strength that made her the center of attention for everyone who mattered. And everyone here mattered. They paid attention to volume, to sparkle, to the performance of success. "You look magnificent," I said. I adjusted my tie. The plan was simple. Mr. Vincent would be there. I would greet him as an equal. Until then, I was just a guest, a very important guest. I would not seek confrontation. I would not reveal my hand. I would simply observe. I nodded to myself in a reflection. Then Candace hugged me. So tightly I could feel her ambition matching my own. "If anything goes wrong," she whispered, "I am the only friend you will ever need." "Nothing is going wrong," I said, firmly. "And when this is over, I expect you to buy me a very expensive car. I want to know if Lenora's face falls first, or if her spirit just shatters. I have money on shatter." I entered the ballroom through the main entrance. It felt correct. I was walking into a building I would one day control, surrounded by people who would one day work for me. The feeling was intoxicating. I saw my targets immediately. They stood in the largest cluster of people. I held my whiskey like a king holds a scepter. I am handsome. I have always known this, the kind of handsome that buys trust. My suit was an investment. My smile was a tool. It was aimed at everyone except the woman I had locked away. Candace stood beside me, red and brilliant, her hand on my arm. A claim. She was sharp. She moved like she already owned the place. Beverly was nearby, holding champagne, dressed in labels that shouted her importance for her. I stayed near the center of the room. I moved with purpose, the way I had learned to move through the world, occupying the space I deserved. My visibility was strategic. I watched, I listened, I learned the layout of my future home. The paintings on the walls were of her family. A portrait of Marcus and Diana hung in one hall. I glanced at it once. They looked weak. People who would hide their own child. People who would sacrifice everything for nothing. The weight of their failure was a lesson. I would not make their mistakes. I was still surveying my kingdom when I saw her. Her voice was not needed. Her presence was a betrayal. Her public image was my public image. "What the hell are you doing here?" I turned slowly. My voice was low, dangerous. A charity event, open to the public. Her excuse was pathetic. I told you not to come. My eyes raked over her plain black dress. Contempt was a physical taste. Showing up looking like that in front of these people. Beverly appeared. As she always did, a loyal soldier. Oh Lord, she is here. Someone should call security. And then Candace, completing our perfect formation. Let her stay, Darnell. Her cruelty was a beautiful thing. It is entertaining, like watching a stray cat wander into the opera. I felt the familiar tightening in my own chest. Not fear, but the thrill of the hunt. The same response my body had been trained to produce over 5 years. Underneath it, my resolve hardened. A quiet steel forged in my own ambition. Tempered in her tears. It had to be done. A necessary correction. I watched her cross the room, a ghost in another woman's dress. That letter had poisoned her, filled her with fantasies. I was saving a legacy from her weakness. She reached me, her eyes burning with a fever I knew well. She began her little speech. I knew about the property, about the job, about the money, a perfect little script of paranoia. The room grew still, not with shock, but with hunger. They could smell a story. My face held its mask. Surprise was for amateurs. I felt only a cold, methodical calm. It was time to fix this. The machine in my mind sorted the variables. Her delusion, the audience, the goal. Righteousness was the only path. I let my voice carry. You are unwell. The words landed like stones, building a wall around her. Beverly played her part beautifully. A worried friend, so concerned. Candace delivered the final perfect stroke, a voice of legal reason, a warning against baseless claims. Lenora felt her power surge. She believed truth was a weapon. She had her proof, she thought, her little screenshots, her digital soldiers. But I had already won that war. She reached for her phone. The confidence in her hands was almost pitiable. The gallery opened to a blank page. A beautiful, clean slate. Her evidence was gone. The plans, the messages, all the ugly little threads were cut. I had erased her reality. I leaned in, my voice a soft, clean blade, meant only for her. A wonderful little app, I said. I saw everything you did. And this morning, I tidied up. I smiled for the crowd, a patient, caring smile. Honey, let us go home now. You are tired, the whispers started. Just as I knew they would. Poor woman, so confused. He is a saint. Candace went to work, weaving the story for them. Her voice was smooth, professional, full of false sympathy. A history of mental struggle. So very sad. We have tried so hard to help. Lenora stood alone. The trap was perfect. Every wall was in place. De wall, built from their pity and her own instability. I took her arm. My fingers found the familiar spot. A place that holds a lesson. A place hidden by a sleeve. Leave now, I whispered. The performance was over. My wife, I announced to the room, needs her rest. Let go. Her fight was so predictable, so pointless. Do not touch me. I turned to our audience, my expression one of pure exhaustion. You see, this is my life. Unstable, aggressive. Beverly drifted near, her voice dripping with poison disguised as pity. The orphan girl. No foundation. It was always going to end this way. Candace added the final diagnosis from across the room. A textbook case, really. Childhood trauma. Paranoia. I have seen it many times. Lenora looked for a savior in the crowd. She found only 500 mirrors reflecting her own madness. They saw only a spectacle. A woman coming apart in public. The pity in their eyes was a kind of poison. Not one of them saw a crime. They saw a tragedy. And I was the long-suffering husband. Her tears started then. Not the quiet, dignified tears she had mastered, These were ugly. They twisted her face. They made noise. Does anyone see this? Her voice cracked. Cannot anyone see? The mask was heavy. I let it fall. For the first time, I let her see the truth. You are nothing. You came from nothing. You will have nothing. Then I pushed her. My hands were firm. A simple, declarative statement. She fell backwards, a tangle of borrowed dress and flailing arms. The sound of her body hitting the marble was final, a judgment. A small spot of blood appeared on her lip, and the little silver necklace, her last pathetic link to a fantasy, broke free. It spun across the floor, a tiny, glittering failure. It came to rest at the feet of an enthralled man in a uniform. 500 people watched. I did not move. It was the security guard. Wilson. He had been a piece of the furniture here for decades, a relic from a time before me. He had seen everything. He was old, slow. His mind, however, was not. The pendant stopped at his shoe. He looked down. I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, recognition. He had seen that cheap piece of metal before. He knew what it was. A key, a marker from a dead man, a promise made 30 years ago, a plan to hide a child, a pendant to bring her home. Wilson knelt by her. He saw past the blood, past the tears, past the broken woman on the floor. He saw a ghost. He saw her father's eyes. He saw her mother's hands. Miss, he whispered, are you all right? She could only nod. He picked up the necklace. His own hands were trembling. He read the tiny letters, a confirmation he did not need. He already knew. He spoke into his radio. His voice was quiet, but it dismantled my world. Code Harrison. Ballroom, she is here. He was not taking her away to be forgotten. He was taking her home. He helped her up. He treated her like she was made of glass. He led her through a hidden door, down a hall lined with portraits of her own blood. He was taking her to a quiet room where my voice could not reach her. He gave her water. He tended to her wounds. And he told her who she was. Miss Harrison. I worked for your parents. I was here that night. I made a promise to your father. I would keep this place safe until you returned. His old eyes were wet with tears. And now you are home. She stared at him. The name sounded foreign on her. Harrison. My grandmother, she began. Ruth was the bravest woman alive, Wilson told her. She gave up this world to keep you safe. She chose a small house and a garden over a palace because she loved you. 20 minutes later, a man named Vincent arrived. He looked like he owned the world, and he was here for her. It was a matter of order. For 10 years, I watched the Harrison estate lie dormant. $60 billion of potential, shackled by sentiment. A ghost. I was not a vulture. I was a surgeon, ready to cut away the rot. My people told me Vincent had finally found her, the lost heir. His relief was a weakness. For me, it was a signal. The game had finally begun. He was laying out papers, a history in ink, deeds, stocks, a foundation. All of it, a disorganized mess waiting for a firm hand. My hand. This girl, Lenora, was the final obstacle, the final variable to be managed. She spoke of being pushed, of marble floors and indignity, an emotional response. Predictable. Vincent confirmed the cameras, the evidence. She asked for justice, not revenge. A quaint distinction. Justice is a system, and I understand systems better than anyone. Her call to a friend was a footnote, a sign of dependence. The chatter about cheesecake was noise, irrelevant data. She was gathering small allies for a small fight. I was preparing for a war. She began to make her moves, asking about the service entrance. The laptop, small-time theatrics, She questioned Vincent about blocking the psychiatric commitment. Candace Thornton had inadvertently handed me a beautiful weapon. Lenora saw it as a temporary problem. I saw it as the key. She worried about her bank accounts, about money Darnell had moved. A trifle. A distraction from the real prize. Vincent confirmed their accountants could trace the funds. Financial abuse, fraud, words, legal maneuvers that took time. Her question about the fabricated hospital complaints was clever. Disbarment. Federal implications. She was clearing the board of minor pieces. She thought she was building a fortress. I saw her building her own cage. She planned her counterattack from the shadows, believing power was a quiet thing. She was wrong. Power is a hammer. I watched Vincent work the room. A quiet word with Dr. Reed, the hospital chairman. The man's face paled. Liability is a powerful motivator. Then Richard Calloway, the developer, a man whose loyalty was tied to profit. Vincent spoke to him, and the man froze. The final conversation was with Judge Patricia Holloway, a family court judge, a useful but limited instrument. In the center of the room, the fools were celebrating. Darnell, Beverly, Candace. They thought they had won. They danced on a floor that was about to give way. I felt a cold sense of satisfaction. Their downfall was inevitable, a necessary clearing of debris. Richard Calloway approached Darnell. The first crack in their foundation appeared. Their ignorance was astounding. He called her a nobody, a nurse from Georgia. The irony was exquisite. The board chairman approached the mother. Talk of criminal fraud and disbarment. Her champagne glass trembled. Perfect. Then Candace took a call. The end of her career delivered over the phone. I watched them look around, lost. They could feel the hunter, but they could not see me. It was time. Chaos is the perfect stage for an entrance. They were weak, confused, prey. I am a specialist. I take things from those who cannot hold them. The Harrison estate was too heavy for this family. My intelligence network had confirmed it. The heir was here. I walked through the door. I am not an obstacle. I am a conclusion. I found her in the private room. I did not knock. Permission is for subordinates. I delivered the truth. The trust had a weakness, a clause I had memorized a decade ago. Sound judgment. Stable personal circumstances. Her psychiatric commitment order, courtesy of Candace, was the proof I needed. The conservatorship petition was already filed. I explained it calmly. Her victory was an illusion. O.N. Vincent's face went white. The hope vanished from the room. That is true power. Not a speech, but a simple statement of fact that shatters worlds. I would have the court order by morning. I would buy the estate for a fraction of its worth. I straightened my jacket. The work was done. I turned and walked away. The silence behind me was the sound of my victory. She thought she could still fight. She walked back into the ballroom, a final, desperate move. She was no ghost. She was a target. She approached Judge Holloway. I watched from a distance. Let her make her speech. Her name was Lenora Harrison. She spoke of a fraudulent order, of my intentions. The judge listened, and I smiled. The girl did not understand. She was confessing her instability to the very person who could sign it into law. She was handing me the win. I had to prove who was in control. Mr. Vincent was just an old man with papers, easily discredited. I glanced across the ballroom. I saw the man I had paid to handle her. He was laughing beside Candace. Everything was going according to plan. The judge wanted to see us. A formality. Candace looked nervous, but I was not. Beverly was on her third champagne, her hands weak. I had this handled. In the private room, the old man spread his forgeries on the table. Wilson gave his paid testimony. They played a video on a small screen. My actions were shown from 3 different angles. It was all just a performance. Medical files and bank records. Fabricated complaints. The emails were a surprise. The judge thought she was recovering them. A clever trick. Judge Holloway studied everything. She had the look of a woman who enjoyed her own importance. For 30 years, she had judged others. When she looked at Lenora, her face softened. She spoke of respect. She spoke of admiration. She mentioned courage. She said people were afraid of what Lenora would say. It was all nonsense. My wife had nothing important to say. The judge thought showing up was power, a foolish idea. I waited for her to finish her speech. I wanted to get back to the party. Let us go make some announcements, she said. The old woman walked to the center of the room. She took the microphone. The music stopped. The room slowly fell silent. Then the judge began to speak. The room grew quiet. I felt a surge of pride. My moment was arriving. But her words were wrong. An emergency protective order. Domestic battery. 500 witnesses. The words were nonsense. A storm of lies. I stood up so fast my chair crashed to the floor. This was absurd. This was a lie. I had never been anything but a firm, guiding hand. She was the one who was unstable. Everyone knew that. I had the paperwork to prove it. She was the one who needed to be controlled. The judge's voice was a hammer. Every word another nail in my coffin. Candace, my lawyer, was being disbarred. Criminal charges. Derek's petition was denied. It was all collapsing. A house of cards in a hurricane. I watched Candace try to flee. Pathetic. I saw Derek walk away. A coward. They were weak. But I was not. The silence in the room was a physical weight. I could feel 500 pairs of eyes on me. Not with admiration, but with judgment. They did not understand. They could not possibly understand what I had done for her. She spoke of the Harrison family, founders of this entire estate, a great philanthropic dynasty. She said they had been without an heir since Marcus and Diana Harrison died 30 years ago. Tonight, she said, it was her honor to introduce their daughter, the sole heir to the Harrison estate. Miss Lenora Harrison. The name did not make sense. Lenora stepped into the ballroom. She wore that same borrowed black dress. Her lip was swollen. Her shoulder was hurt. Around her neck was the silver pendant, that cheap piece of metal. She was not surrounded by guards. She wore no designer clothes. There was no dramatic music. She simply walked into the room. She was the same woman I had pushed to the floor, quiet, simple, but the room was changing. The ballroom filled with gasps. The whispers grew louder and louder. 500 people were looking at her differently. The quiet woman, the worthless wife I called her, the orphan Beverly hated, the stray cat Candace mocked. She owned this ground. She owned these walls. She owned the chandeliers that now showed their shocked faces. My own face felt numb. My mind, which was always so fast, had stopped working. The blood drained from my skin. I felt cold. I was a man watching his own destruction. That is impossible, I whispered. She is nobody. She is an orphan. She was a nurse. She has everything. Vincent's voice cut through the air. He had protected this lie for 40 years. This mansion, worth $60 billion, belonged to her. The Harrison Foundation belonged to her. The entire Harrison dynasty, all of it. It all belongs to Miss Lenora Harrison. It always has. Beverly's champagne glass slipped. It shattered on the marble. The sound was sharp. It was final. I looked at Lenora. The woman I told was nothing. The woman whose money I took. The woman I shoved to the floor of her own home. She looked at me. It was not anger. It was not victory. It was just clarity. She saw me for what I was. You pushed me to the floor of my own house, Darnell, she said. Her voice was quiet. The worst part is not that you did not know it was mine. The worst part is that it should not have mattered. She turned to Beverly. The old woman was gripping a chair, trying not to collapse. You called me worthless, Lenora said, an orphan with no value. The only thing that changed is you found out I have money. That fact tells me everything I need to know about who you really are. Beverly's mouth opened. Nothing came out. For once in her life, she had no cruel words left. Then, Lenora looked at Candace. She spoke to the lawyer who ruined her career, the woman who wore her bracelet, the woman who tried to lock her away. You wanted what you thought he had, Lenora said. You stood beside him while he destroyed me. You believed he was successful and powerful, but he has nothing. He never did, and now neither do you. From the back, a woman shouted. It was that waitress, Clara. The audacity of these people could power a whole city. A few people laughed. It was not a happy sound. It was the sound of pressure being released. The sound of my world ending. The guards escorted us from the building. I tried to argue. I claimed my rights as her husband. I mentioned laws I did not understand. I named people who would not help me. Beverly cried her fake tears. They did not work anymore. Candace said nothing. She walked with her head down. Her career was gone. Every choice she made for 3 years led to this single moment. This utter ruin. The ballroom was quiet. 500 people, in their expensive clothes, stood in silence. They felt shame. They watched me push her to the floor. They watched her bleed. Not one of them helped. Lenora made them feel that. She did not offer them forgiveness. She did not speak of starting over. She stood in her ballroom, in her borrowed dress. She said this gala would continue. All the money would go to scholarships for orphans. In memory of her parents, Marcus and Diana Harrison, and in honor of her grandparents, who taught her that worth was not about money. 6 months later, I sat in a small apartment. I read the news on a cheap tablet. She was dedicating a new hospital wing. She was powerful. She was respected. She was a Harrison. And I was nothing. It was her fault. It was all her fault. She had lied to me from the very beginning. The world outside the mansion was gray. The sunlight did not reach me. A security guard's hand was on my arm, guiding me away. I felt nothing but a cold, hard rage. She had done this, the weak, worthless woman I had molded. She had turned my world to ash. Thank you. I imagined her whispering that to her dead grandparents. Thank you for protecting me. The irony was a bitter poison in my throat. I was the one who had protected her. I was the one who had given her worth, and she had destroyed me for it. I thought of the mansion. My mansion. The ballroom where I would have reigned. Now it would become some charity project, some sad place filled with broken women and crying children, a monument to her weakness. The thought of their laughter echoing in my halls made my stomach turn. She would erase me. She would take the power and the wealth I had earned through my patience and my strength, and she would squander it on the undeserving, on people as worthless as she once was. I heard the stories, the foundation, the scholarships, the quiet life. It was all an act, a carefully constructed performance to paint me as the villain. But I remembered the truth. I remembered the woman who flinched at her own shadow, the woman I had to teach how to exist in the world. True wealth is in who you are. Her grandfather's words. What a fool. True wealth is power. It is control. And she had stolen it from me. I was the one who deserved it. Healing was not a word in my vocabulary. There was only the daily practice of my anger. I chose to remember her as she was. Weak, dependent, mine. The old voices in my head were my own. They told me I was right. They told me I was the victim. I pictured her at those graves, whispering her lies. I will make you proud. She would never make anyone proud. She was a thief. She had stolen my life, my legacy, and for that, I would never forgive her. I watched her world from a distance. Every new building, every ceremony was a monument to my failure, a testament to her betrayal. She believed her worth was her own. She was wrong. Her worth was what I gave her, what I saw in her. A beautiful, empty vessel that I was meant to fill. Now it was filled with poison and lies. The world called her extraordinary, but I knew the truth. She was nothing, and I was the man she had ruined. She was not a survivor. She was a ghost who had stolen a life that belonged to me. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.